It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Since the beginning of movie making in the late 1800s, horror films primarily consisted of incredible monsters, horrible creatures, and unrealistic frights. But in 1960, that would change with a significant turning point in the movie industry when a small-budget film called Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, would set a new standard in Hollywood with new techniques, ideas, and scenes that were unthinkable at the time. Alfred Hitchcock was born in Leytonstone, England on August 13, 1899. He grew up in a strict Catholic family and at a young age became interested in engineering. Hitchcock would eventually attend St. Ignatius College in London and study engineering. Soon after this, he got a job as a draftsman and an advertising designer for a cable company called Henley's. This is where Hitchcock gained more interest in writing and film. In 1919, Players Lasky, which would soon become Paramount Pictures, was opening up a film studio in Islington, England. This was the introduction to the movie-making business for young Hitchcock when he was hired as a title designer for silent films. In 1925, Hitch, as he would soon become known by movie circles, directed his first picture, The Pleasure Garden, and in 1940 he won an Academy Award for Best Picture for his movie titled Rebecca. By 1955, he would direct an amazing 42 pictures in England and America, and quickly became one of the most well-known directors in the movie industry. It was that same year that Alfred Hitchcock Presents would premiere on television and add to his popularity. Between 1955 and 1960, Hitchcock made 3 very popular and expensive pictures before he began filming Psycho. Psycho originally began after Hitchcock read a novel by Robert Bloch based on a Wisconsin serial killer named Ed Gein. After reading it, he let a contact with Paramount know that he would like to produce a film based on the book, but he was told they were frightened of a movie with such violence. After much discussion, a deal was made in which the movie could be filmed at the backlot of Universal Studios, with Paramount owning 40% of the picture's profit and Hitchcock 60%. Hitch proceeded to buy the rights to the book for $9,000 and purchased as many copies of the book he could find so the ending wouldn't be ruined. Hitchcock had ideas of a small budget and would eventually use his Alfred Hitchcock Presents film crew. He also wanted the movie to be shown in black and white so it wouldn't appear too gory. Hitch picked his writer, his cast, and began filming mid-November 1959 on a film that would include numerous turning points within the movie industry. Psycho opened on June 2, 1960 in various theaters in Los Angeles and New York. To help in promotion, Hitchcock made a trailer for the film in which viewers were taken on a tour of the Bates property, and this led to a highly anticipated audience.
Good afternoon. Here we have a quiet little motel, tucked away off the main highway, and as you see, perfectly harmless looking, when in fact it has now become known as the scene of the crime.
As soon as the movie begins, an immediate turning point is noticed. A skyline view of Phoenix, Arizona is shown as the camera pans into a window showing 2 lovers in a motel room. One of these lovers is Marion Crane, portrayed by Janet Leigh. The audience will discover that she is partially naked. To have such an attention grabber in the opening scene was unheard of. The movie industry would eventually follow suit, and to have an immediate opening scene to get the viewer's interest has become the standard. Another turning point occurs in the movie when Marion Crane decides to get rid of some calculations about stolen money by flushing it down the toilet. Hitchcock took a huge risk in filming this simple scene. In 1960, a toilet had never been shown on screen, much less flushing. Immediately after this takes place, Marion takes off her robe and enters the shower. One of the most significant turning points will occur and become one of the most historic scenes ever to be filmed and shown on the big screen. To set up this scene for the movie, an agreement first had to be made between Hitchcock and the theaters. He demanded no one be allowed into the theaters once the movie began because the scene would occur in the first 40 minutes of film. There were no advanced screenings of Psycho, so movie critics had to watch the movie with the general public. This small turning point was both significant and risky to the movie succeeding. Now the stage was set for one of the most horrifying scenes ever shown to an audience in a movie theater. It took one whole week, 7 cameras, and 72 different angles to film this historic scene. It would also be the first time a film showed someone's death so much more grotesque and personal. The scene actually never shows a knife piercing Marion's flesh. Hitchcock uses film editing and the montage to trick you into seeing the knife cut her. The scene switches from the views of the murderer itself and the victim, giving both perspectives. Another turning point involved the music composed by Bernard Herrmann that made the scene even more frightening. Today, music is used as a trigger to forewarn the audience of a possible frightening scene. This scene left a huge influence on how terrifying scenes would be shown in the future. Violent and unexpected scenes became more prevalent and accepted, and in many cases, anticipated. A small turning point would occur in the final scene, which took place at a police station where the police are explaining to Lilia, Marion's sister, and Sam, Marion's boyfriend, what happened to Norman Bates. In this conversation, the word transvestite is used. This word had never been used in a movie before, but is brought to the forefront in this movie. After they explain, the camera follows an officer who goes to a room where Norman is being held. In the room, Norman is having a conversation with himself in his mind. This is a huge turning point because this scene shows the audience that anyone could turn into the monster of the film. This also shows that the monster cannot just be identified by outward appearances, it is much deeper than that. Alfred Hitchcock left a huge influence on films today with his creative genius, surprises, and innovative techniques. He was the first director that would choose his script on his own without the production company. His introduction of what is called pure cinema, where the camera angles and frames are helping tell the story. For example, when Marion and Norman are having the conversation in his parlor, the camera faces Marion at a normal angle because there is nothing wrong with her. But when Norman is talking, the camera is angled looking up towards Norman, giving the audience a hint that there is something not right with him. The MacGuffin effect is another technique introduced by Hitchcock, which allows an object of the film to be the center of the movie and drive the plot. In Psycho, the MacGuffin is the $40,000 Marion steals. Other films that incorporated the use of a MacGuffin were Star Wars, Pulp Fiction, Good Will Hunting, Titanic, and Indiana Jones. His high-scaled camera angles and manipulation of the audience also helped his reputation as a master of suspense. In Psycho, for example, Hitchcock pulled this off by showing what seemed to be a real-life relationship between Norman and his mother, only to find out that she had been dead the whole time. Psycho also influenced many later movies. It started the slasher movie genre and has left a huge influence on horror movies such as Jaws, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and The Blair Witch Project. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was a significant turning point in movie history. It introduced new filming techniques, pure cinema, and the MacGuffin effect. It also introduced items never seen or heard before on the big screen. But the biggest turning point would be how Hitchcock brought together a gruesome murder combined with horrifying music and a perfect montage in such an intimate setting. Audiences would be shocked beyond belief for years to come. Still today, Psycho is one of the most watched horror films. There have been 3 sequels, 1 remake, and a biographical movie recently released on Hitchcock and the making of Psycho. We can honestly state that the movie Psycho changed films forever.
The shock of someone killing someone that way and it being so sudden that, and you'll never forget that, the music behind it too, because the music really had an amazing effect.